We start this not with Elric's first appearance in comics, the one from Conan with the weird hat, but with his first series from 1983, made by Roy Thompson, Greg Russell, and Michael T. Gilbert, Elric of Melnibone, Out of the Dreaming City. Irkun comes to Elric, Emperor of Melniboné, lover of his cousin's sister, and hated by Irkun himself. The cousin asks the albino if the music from the surgically operated slaves displeases him because he won't join the dance. Elric tells him no. Irkun tries to imply that Elric is weak, and while the Emperor's only duty to his people is to rule them, he asks, hypothetical, if the ruler is weak in body, does that not mean he is weak in spirit, and thus unfit to rule his subjects? Purely hypothetical, of course. Elric answers that no such emperor exists. Divim Tvar, the Lord of the Dragon Isles, threatens Irkun, but Elric tells him that his cousin saw him bored and only wanted to simulate him a little. But now Elric grows weary and he must retire. And so Elric leaves, putting upon the ruby throne the war helmet. Irkun tries to grab it, but Divim and the guards stop him and tell him it's forbidden to touch the throne or the helm, as long as you're not the emperor. Irkun tells the Lord of the Dragon Cave, Tavar, that he would be lucky to die with his master. Divim wants the honor guard to escort the red-haired cousin, or stepchild, but he refuses and leaves by himself. Cimmeril jumps at her brother, telling him if he does anything to Elric, she will kill him herself. Irkun says that she picked her side, and now her doom is her own, after slapping her. Irkun won't accept to have the blood of their house diluted with that of Elric, and tells his sister to look for her own life. Irkun then exits the hall while Cimmeril cries in the arms of Divim. Elric and Cimmeril later on ride upon horses on a beautiful day outside of Imrir. The weather was nice. Cimmeril had used her magic to create a cloudless sky. The cousin lovers stop, and Elric asks if Irkun didn't forbid Cimmeril from using her magic. Cimmeril answers that Irkun believes all magic as dark and evil as his. But that matters little. Cimmeril is worried about Elric, stopping so close to Imrir only for him to collect his thoughts. Cimmeril brings up that while Irkun is her brother, Elric will have to slay him at some point. Elric mentions that the only way for his cousin to kill him would be to use magic, but wizardry won't work on the Emperor. But he wonders if Irkun wouldn't be a better emperor to a people that want to conquer the old world. They reach a cliff and Elric says he can't slay his cousin. He doesn't have the right. But Cimmeril argues that he does have the right by being the emperor, and all those loyal to him think so. Elric doubts himself and thinks that Irkun would be a better emperor again. What if Elric brings doom to the Dragon Isles? Cimmeril says that he sees doom in all things, and he should accept the good gifts he has. There are few in number already. Elric agrees and proposes they go swimming. After the swim, they go to fornicate in a cave. Once they are exhausted from that, Elric thinks about how his fate is tied to Melniboné, and would want to learn more of it, or far less. He thinks of when the Dragon Isles was the mistress of the world, rich and powerful, human merchants coming directly to them, and about the powerful sorcerer emperors, of which he was descended from. The 428 in line, he feels small compared to them. He wished he could know all those conquering wizards and how they respected the old rituals. Elric, in his right, respects a few of the rituals, and because of that, Irkun says that he will bring doom to the Dreaming City. Elric wonders if for all his scheming and manipulation, his cousin might be right. The Empire lost its power in 500 years, despite their dragon riders led by Divim Dvar. In a century or two, most of what remains of that power will be gone. The young human kingdoms already tried to pirate the last remains of the Empire by attacking the Dreaming City. Nobody wants to believe Elric when he talks about the downfall of their empire. So Elric contemplates. He wishes his father Sadric had more children so a suitable heir could lead the empire. But his father loved only one woman. Unable to find joy in another partner, what remained of her was the thin-blooded Elric. But the child was a prodigy of magic, more powerful than all the emperors that came before him. Nobles in the court even talked about how he could bring back the might of their empire. And this power did not come alone. Elric was weak, needing all manner of magic rituals known to kings and drugs to be able to lift his hands from his body. This left him only the pleasure of reading, and the more he read, the more he wondered if such powers as his should be used at all. Elric muses if and when he wed Cimmeril, if he should respect the old ritual of sacrificing 12 brides and their grooms to the Lord of Chaos. A ritual his father ignored and brought doom upon his family. Could this ritual save Melniboné? The denizens of the Isles wish they knew that, and so too did Elric, son of Sadric. A storm comes, and Cimmeril wants them to stay in the cave, but Elric needs his potion. He only has an hour or two before his weakness comes back. So they go to their horses, and rain falls like a waterfall. Thunder and lightning flash across the earth, like a lord of chaos tries to communicate with the world. Cimmeril looks at her lover, and a cold chill shocks her body. Elric looks to her as a demon without humanity. He laughs at the storm, he laughs at the rain falling upon him, and Cimmeril knows, deeply and tragically, that this morning ride was the last moment of peace they would ever have. A rabbit looks at them as they ride. Elric laughs, and Cimmeril tries to laugh too, but she can't. She knows that this storm is a sign of a greater storm to come. Welcome to the domain of Dr. Jester, are the first words that greet us. Cimmeril and Elric reach the city, and they are greeted by guards. Elric learns that spies are held in the tower of Munshajik, barbarian spies from the southern lands. Elric tells the guards to escort his lover and then runs towards the tower. The tower was named after the wizard architect that created the sea maze. The tower also watches over all 5 entrances of the maze. Navigators are only permitted to know one route, and one route only when it comes to the sea maze, but if the spies learned of all 5 of the entrances, then that would spell the doom of the dreaming city. Elric rode his horse there with reckless abandon. Awaiting Elric in the tower was an artist with a scalpel in his hand. That man, the artist, is Dr. Jest, a performer of the most cruel of arts, learning secrets. A performative one rather than a creative one, but a good doctor has argued otherwise. But that makes sense. One would make that argument once he gets the position of chief interrogator of Melniboné. The doctor greets Elric. The albino emperor looks at the spies, a woman and a boy, both hung upside down with cut marks on them. The boy says demon. Elric asks if they reveal their secrets. The doctor says that not yet. The spies like being dramatic. But the doctor thinks that they are there to map the route. Elric just asks when he will get their secrets, and the good doctor promises that soon. As Emperor, Elric had to watch the ritual. He wasn't as much as disgusted as he was bored. He learned long ago to get rid of feelings that he didn't need it as an emperor. While in contemplation, the doctor came to Elric to tell him that the spies really came to mark the route of the maze. The doctor tells Elric that when these spies do not return, the young kingdoms will sail forth nevertheless. Elric is wondering if they won't know they are being expected, but the doctor tells him rumors have it that 4 spies were seen trying to escape the maze back, and the spies were slain. Elric summons all his generals and admirals in front of the ruby throne. And who comes first? Of course, Irkun, who asked to lead the armies himself since the emperor should not be trifled with such things. Elric shuts him down since that is the duty of the emperor. The Vimtvar comes with news from the dragon cave. Elric welcomes him and tells him to wait until all the generals are there. Once everyone is gathered, Elric asks if they will let these young kingdoms come and take the wealth of the dreaming city. Of course, everybody says no. Then the emperor asks how they should take care of their enemies. Irkun says to take the dragons and battle barges and strike first, burning their whole kingdoms. Vim tells him that's not possible, since they don't have dragons. Irkun asks what treachery is this, but Vim tells him because Irkun wanted to use the dragons against the Vilmerian pirates, the dragons are asleep and they aren't waking. Elric says this won't be an issue, their navy is enough. He asks the admiral if the fleet is ready. It is, but it can't all fit in the maze. So Elric orders that part of it set sail now and stand by the coast to get rid of any enemies that might try to flee. Irkun again tries to ask for the command of the warriors on the land and sea since the Emperor shouldn't be disturbed. Maybe he has a book he wants to read. Elric thanks him and denies him again. Elric goes to his quarters where Tagobones, his old teacher, is waiting for him. The teacher asks the Emperor if it's true that he will know the joy of battle. Elric confirms, and the old man shows Elric the armor worn by the old Melnibonian emperors, said to be invincible even against the most dreaded swords, Stormbringer and Mournblade, if the higher powers did not take them a long time ago. The teacher also says Elric learned well the art of war and how to fight with a sword and bow and spear. Despite his condition, he made himself the most skilled fighter. Except for one, of course. Elric asks if it's Irkun, but the teacher does not confirm it. He says, except for one. The teacher wants to put the armor on Elric, but Elric wants to take a bath first and sleep before battle. Tagobones says if that is what he wishes, he will comply. Elric comments how his teacher would have him strut around in the armor as if he was Lord Ariok himself. Of course, the teacher is mortified at the accusation of heresy, but Elric reassures him he said worse without anything happening. And in the Dreaming City, the Emperor controls the demons, not the other way around. The teacher says, if you say so, my lord, and Elric tells him that is the truth. Elric in his black armor stood upon his golden flagship. He regarded his plan. He knew it'd work, he was certain of it, but he found the waste of life, both Melnibonian and barbarian, to be a waste. Irkun has already found himself upon the flagship with his cousin and using his own sorcery enveloped the sea maze in a mist. In the mist they waited. As the Southlanders came, Elric told his men to let them pass. And so they did. Finally, once all the ships were past the giant Melnibonian fleet, it appeared out of nowhere as if it materialized from stone. While the barbarians had 100 ships and Elric merely half, the Melnibonian armada dwarfed the Southlanders in size. The battle occurred as you would expect, with the humans being annihilated and joining the depths where Strasha crews his boats with the souls of those that died on ocean conflicts. But it wasn't all that good. A messenger came to tell Elric that 5 ships managed to get away. Elric expected this, because what net catches all the fishes? Irkun wanted to pursue them to get more glory for their empire, but Elric told him no, they would let them go. Of course, the ambitious prince is shocked by this news, but Elric says it's better to let them live and tell their kin what happened there. Irkun implies that Elric let them go because he doesn't have the drugs that grant him his strength, and that's why he let them go, because he was too weak. Elric told his cousin that he is trying his patience, but in typical Irkun fashion, he deflects by saying he is thinking that the people will say he is weak. Elric is annoyed by this and asks who will think so. His cousin? Elric gives in finally and accepts to follow the boats. Irkun turns to relay the orders with a shine in his eye. The golden barrages of Melniboné sailed serenely on the water until they reached their targets, and with iron hooks they drew in their prey. Elric was the first to jump into battle on the Southlander deck. He cut 3 foes down with his broadsword that was once used by the human hero Obek, and made his way to the captain of the ship, who greeted Elric. "Die, you white-faced demon, die! You have no place on this earth any longer. Do you not see that?" Elric responds, "You should have left us alone. When did Imrir last sail against the young kingdoms?" "You offer us harm by your very existence, whiteface. Your sorcery, your custom, your arrogance." These words echoed in Elric's head that he almost forgot to defend himself. Almost. Elric asked if this was the motive to attack them, their disgust for them, or was it the wealth they possessed? The captain says that greed is a human quality, but Melnibonians aren't human. They think themselves gods, but they aren't even that. Surprisingly, Elric agrees with the captain. The captain tells the Emperor that the chaos gods they worship will be their undoing. The human holy men and seers have seen the fall of Melniboné. Elric tells him the Chaos Lords have taken their blessing away 1,000 years ago. Fewer children are born in the city. Their dragons no longer breed, and the humans have managed to traverse the sea maze. Perhaps it is the Chaos Lord's fault for their waning power, or perhaps they've grown tired of power. The captain wants to talk, but Elric stabs him. The captain complains that this wasn't fair, and that they barely begun talking. He does say the Emperor is most skillful, before cursing him to burn in the higher hell, and saying farewell. Elric cuts the captain's head and throws it into the water. Irkun comes and says the captain is right. When asked how, the cousin says when it comes to Elric's skill with the sword. Elric never managed to make himself hate his cousin. But now he did. Like he saw through his cousin's eyes what was inside his soul. That made Elric wish he was never born a Melnibonian. That his cousin was never born to begin with. The Golden Fleet catch up to the fleeing barbarians. Having slaves drugged up that improve their strength for hours helps with that, even if the slaves end up dying shortly after the drugs wane. The Melnibonians unleash fireballs upon the fleeing ships. 2 of them get hit, but the other turn course and sail towards the flagship. More fireballs are released. One ship starts burning but does not change its course. Elric smiles, thinking this was the plan, to be hit with a fireball, and as the flames spread, ram it into the flagship to burn it too. Now the barbarians prepare their hooks. Elric wants to fight, but his strength is fading. Irkun tells his cousin to stay there, but Elric refuses. The Emperor finds himself in a 2-on-1 situation, and it seems that he gets overpowered. But Elric lets them know that he won't go to hell unattended as he kills one of his assailants. Maybe he won't go at all. The other barbarian calls Elric enslaver of his ancestors. He proclaims that the might of the young kingdoms is united against him. He almost puts our albino protagonist to death, but Elric manages to stab him as the barbarian lunges towards him. The cadaver falls upon Elric as he scarcely feels the impact of the corpse as his deficient blood no longer enriched by drugs betray him. And the blackness closes in around him like a pack of hungry wolves about a lamb. A splash of seawater wakes Elric up to see the carnage of the battle. He asks his cousin, who of course was there, if they were victorious. Irkun says yes, but he fears should the battle have lasted longer, they would have lost their esteemed leader. Elric says he is still their leader and orders their return to the Dreaming City so he might sit upon the ruby throne once more. After the battle, Irkun mentions again how if the battle would have lasted any longer, they would have lost their leader. Elric falls to the ground and asks his cousin to help him up, but he doesn't. Elric then commands him, but Irkun tells him he can't command him. He is the Emperor now. He puts on the black crown. Elric argues that while he can overlook such treacheries, others won't be able to. Elric also says this is unwise, but his cousin was never the most cautious of men. Irkun says his farewell and throws Elric overboard, saying that now a true Melnibonian will sit on the ruby throne, and he might even make his sister Cimmeril his wife. It wasn't unheard of. Yes, Targaryens are inspired by Melnibonians, if you ever wondered or didn't know. Elric falls into the sea, his armor dragging him down, only his cousin's last words ringing in his ears. In a way, Elric was happy his cousin was putting an end to his life. Finally, he will be free from the conflicts that have torn his mind. He gives himself to the sea and to Strasha. As he does, the spell to summon the Master of the Sea comes to his mind. Sea ruler, father of our blood, thine aid is sought, thine aid is sought. Your salt our blood your salt, your blood the blood of man. Even as the darkness comes, these words ring in his mind. He opens his eyes. Either death is taking his sweet time in coming, or even as he is dying, Elric is dreaming, for he sees figures approaching him. The centermost of them speak with the voice of a tidal wave. It's Thrasha, and he asks how might he aid Elric, so he aids himself. Elric's mouth is filled with water, and yet he can still speak. Proof to himself that he dreams. He tells the Master of the Sea that he just wishes to drown. The King of the Sea tells him that he was summoned by Elric's mind, and so he must wish to live after all. Elric says that if the Sea King was real, he would take him to Imrir so he can deal with his cousin and save his lover. Strasha then takes the Emperor and starts swimming. He will not die. Not today, that is. Water leaves Elric's lungs, and now he can breathe. Certainly this wasn't a dream. Elric was curious why this Thrasha come if the ritual wasn't done. The King of the Sea answered that urgent matters are more important than rituals, but he urges the Emperor to rest. Elric says he mentioned something about their destiny being intertwined, and he asks if he knows of his fate. The Sea King answers that only a little. The world is growing old, and the power of the elements wanes, as does that of Elric. The lords of the higher worlds are taking an interest into the world once more, but that's all Thrasha could say. That and the fact that Elric would be happy to just accept his destiny once he understands it. The Sea King then takes Elric back to his own world to fulfill his promise, but not before promising Elric that they will meet again, before Elric's life comes to an end, and that his brother of fire, an heir, will try to aid him. The Sea King also tells our hero to beware the gods, for their gifts and aid must always be paid for. On the golden barges, it was Irkun's banner that flies high, not Elric's. He didn't lose any time to proclaim his cousin dead and claim himself as the new emperor. Divim Dvar would mourn Elric and would suspect Irkun, but he wouldn't dare to accuse the emperor without proof. The next night and the next 7, the wild dance of Melniboné will start. Thanks to potions and petty spells, no citizen will sleep as they will mourn their dead emperor. The dragon princes will go in the street taking any women they please. As the ship approaches the harbor, Cimmeril awaits. Divim wanted to be the one to tell the future empress of what happened, but that would be done by a face that would tell her with a grin. The two siblings greet each other, and as Cimmeril asks for Elric, she realizes her brother has the dragon helm on his brow. Cimmeril screams that Irkun killed him. She tells the captain of her guards to slay her brother, but the captain refuses. A soldier comes and says he will do it if that is what the princess wishes. She says yes, above all else. Irkun just tells her to forget about Elric. He is now the emperor. He then tells her that Elric is now part of the tentacled Chaos Lord's oars. She calls him a murderer and a traitor. The soldier wants to slay him. His lady Cimmeril said that he is the slayer of the emperor. The captain tells his man to shut up. But the soldier jumps at Irkun. The new emperor crosses his hands in fear as the soldier says that no slayer of emperor should ever wear the dragon helm. The captain of course stabs his own man, because as he remarks his loyalty is to the ruby throne. Irkun tells his sister that she is now his, entirely, and she faints. Irkun orders to have his sister taken to her tower and 2 guards to be always at her side, even in her most intimate of moments, so she won't plan any treachery. He also ordered the dead soldier to be served to Cimmeril's slaves, so he can continue serving her even in death. The captain smiles, appreciating the joke. He now felt there was a true Melnibonian as emperor. Irkun approaches the hall where the ruby throne awaits him. He does so like he would approach a woman he knows is his without question. He opens the doors and can't wait for the vault to taste blood once more. But a robed figure stands on the ruby throne, scaring Irkun and his goons. The figure asks why did he slay him. He responds because he wasn't strong enough, or cruel enough, or humorous enough. The figure answers without a pause. Is it humor you want, Irkun? Is this not a goodly joke, cousin? Taking the hood off, Elric reveals himself. Irkun couldn't believe it, but Elric told him that there are others that rule the sea. Now Elric will rule as his cousin wanted him to, and he will be the first victim. Irkun tried to curse his cousin while asking for the help from Ariok and the Dukes of Hell, but the Emperor told him that the Chaos Lords are weak upon the earth. He will need a magic much stronger than his to call for their aid. Elric asks for Cimmeril, and Divim tells him she is held captive by a captain loyal to Irkun. Elric tells him to get her and the captain and bring them to him. When asked about his cousin, the Emperor orders to stay there until his sister comes. Irkun cries that he should be dead, drowned, taken to the bottom of the sea by his armor. But Elric tells him that he has friends in the sea. Then in a surprising move, Irkun tries to call out Elric's hypocrisy of breaking his vow to not use sorcery, a vow Irkun was against from the very beginning. The cousin then asks if he will bring the Lords of Chaos back, But Elric tells him no one can bring the Lords of Chaos or Law if they don't want or wish to be summoned. He should know that, in fact. Didn't he try to summon Arioch to bless him with the 2 black swords? Irkun asks how did he know that? Elric didn't. But now he did. Cimmeril comes and the 2 lovers embrace. The captain is brought in front of Elric and he judges him swiftly. At least Irkun was ambitious, but the captain just wanted to be one of his cousin's curs. The captain tries to justify that he serves the ruby throne no matter who stands upon it. Elric says, so the traitor thinks loyalty motivated him. I think not. The captain begs for a swift death and not to be tortured, but Elric has other plans. When he finds out how the soldier that wanted to obey Cimmeril died, and what happened to him after his death, then Elric finds a fitting punishment. The captain will be tortured, and pieces of his body will be served to Irkun at the feast. Of course, Elric is a kind ruler, and he will let Irkun decide how he wants to eat the captain. In the end, nobody expects him to eat the meat raw. Elric promises that he will be the beginning of it. The feast will start at midnight, and Irkun is to be confined to his own tower until then. After the captain and the cousin are taken, Divim and Cimmeril are glad with Elric's punishment. Elric says he follows traditions, and he is no longer his own man. Cimmeril says that his punishment might destroy him, and it's better to just slay her brother as soon as possible. Elric answers, so what if it does? Let me be destroyed, to become merely an unthinking extension of my ancestors. The puppet of ghosts and memories dancing to strings which extend back through time for 10,000 years. Divim thinks his emperor needs to rest, but Elric denies that. He tells his lover that her brother won't die. He will be exiled to the Young Kingdoms. Now Cimmeril says he is too lenient, but Elric doesn't fear the counterplots of his cousin. He asks for them to leave him until an hour before the feast. He will go to his tower to prepare himself. There Elric spends hours cursing his scrolls and books, blaming them for his concerns regarding morality and justice, for his feelings of guilt and despair over behaving like a Melnibonian monarch is expected to behave. Later on, his courtiers dress him. He enters the throne room and is greeted by cheers, mightier and more wholehearted than any before. Dr. Jest was also there. Elric greets their cheers with a smile. He then asks for Cimmeril, Divim, and the prisoners, but none were there. Then enters Divim, his sword broken, his body defeated, with a mist coming out of him. Elric asks what happened, and Divim tells him Irkun used the groaning mist to escape. He tried to go after him, but the mist missed his senses. Cimmeril was also taken. Elric wants to go after his cousin, but a mist comes in the room, and in there Elric hears voices calling him weak, foolish, that he must die. The mist forms a face, that of Cimmeril, and it ages until it becomes that of a crone, and then a skull with rotting flesh. In the nightmare, Elric grows weaker and more desperate. Hours pass until groans become just strands of sound. Again, Elric knows he ignores Cimmeril about her brother, and once more she is in danger. He has now just one simple thought, that he is not fit to live. After Elric recovers from the mist, every Melnibonian is used to search for Irkun and Cimmeril. In the first month, warriors march and pass through the Young Kingdoms. In the second month, dragons terrorize the sky looking for something. In the fourth month, ships sail to the most remote of ports. But every time there is no answer, there is no clue of what happened to them. Elric muses over his morality and why Irkun hated him. As faith and hope disappear, Elric's determination increases. Becoming stronger by testing new drugs, he would spend time reading grimoires written in High Melnibonian, and once he was satisfied with the answer, which was hard to get and he needed to be very precise, he would sleep for 3 days in a drugged slumber. He meditates for 5 hours, then paints the walls and floor with symbols. He puts himself in a spread eagle in the center of a rune, throwing his mind in a vast whirlpool. Then says one word that turns blood cold. Arioch. An eye appears and Elric asks Arioch for help, and that he will serve him. But the eye disappears fast. A fly comes and flies on the rune, then another, then on Elric's face, annoying him. The fly just buzzes around until it covers Elric's entire face, and then it smiles, turning into a humanoid fly creature. Then, The fly burns up, revealing a burning man. Arioch calls Elric alone to be worthy to serve him. When Elric asks how could he serve the Chaos Lord, Arioch tells him first by serving himself regarding the problem of Irkun and Cimmeril. Elric hesitates, but the Chaos Lord brings up that he can help him with his issue. So Elric accepts, and his body is filled with a static fire. Arioch says Elric can ask him one question before he departs. Elric has two questions, but the Lord of Chaos refuses and can't tell him what future holds. But he tells his servant to not worry as long as he serves him. So of course Elric asks about Irkun. Arioch tells him he conquered two human kingdoms known as Oin and Yu, and he uses a mirror of memory to make people forget they saw him and his Melnibonians. The only way to reach Irkun is the ship that sails the land and sea. Arioch says farewell and leaves when Elric asks about destroying the mirror. Elric then yells for his guards and slaves to bring him his armor. Elric and Divim discuss about the dragons and how only two can be awakened, but it won't be a use to them. Then they talk about the ship that sails both land and sea. Elric read of it in the Silver Grimoire. It was used by an old Melnibonian hero before Melniboné existed. Divim asks Elric if his friends, the water elementals, that promised to aid him won't be able to help. Elric tells his friend about how he is reserved when using magic. Divim remarks he is a sorcerer, and he managed to summon a Chaos Lord. Elric then tells him about the price of magic, and how overstrong potions he is using might kill him before he finds Cimmeril, because they are keeping him strong using what few resources Elric still has. But he concedes he needs to do this to talk to Strasha. The two of them go to the sea, and there Elric sits cross-legged, trying to remember the rune that summoned the Sea King a few months ago. Divim looks at the albino, and he seemed childlike to him. As Elric performed the ritual, a strong storm came upon them, and Divim understood why his emperor was reluctant to use sorcery. Elric spoke in the old language, and Divim understood just one word: Strasha. In one instant, the Sea King appeared, and this image will haunt Divim for the rest of his life. Strasha says the elements knew Elric invited the Chaos Lords in his plane, and they are not pleased with them, but they understand that it was his destiny to do that, so they do not have any enmity for Elric. The Emperor says if he does not wish, he does not have to help him, but the Sea King tells him he will help Elric, even if it creates trouble in the future. Elric asks about the ship that sails the land and sea. Strasha tells Elric that he knows of the ship. It was made by him and his brother, the Earth King Grom, each giving a part of their power to create it, but Grom did so unwillingly, so the ship sails better on water than on land. Elric asks for this ship, and the Sea King tells him he will get it, but not here, at his tower, and so the King of the Sea disappears. Divim and Elric make their way back. The Lord of the Dragon Caves tells his emperor that he feels the days of Melniboné are numbered, as are his, and that the ship seems to be a double-bladed knife. He also tells Elric he has two sons, 5 Melnibonians. Elric says he never mentioned them. Why do it now? Divim answers that he feels the destiny of the empire is in Elric's hands, so before he does something, he wants him to think of his children. Elric tells him he will do so, but he will never bring ruination to his empire. Divim accepted that, but his eyes did not tell the same story. The next morning, Divim found Elric dressed in armor, with his eyes burning with red vitality. Yet Divim thinks of what he did when he returned to the city. He went to his mistresses and told them to take their children to the dragon caves to prepare them for their training. There was little time left. Divim asks Elric if he is well. The Emperor responds that he is, but he wishes the ship would come. Divim tries to tell him it would be better to rest until the ship was spotted, but Elric was too anxious. Then Elric tells his friend to look over yonder, and there was movement there. The trees parted as Elric's ship came. They get on the ship with some men, not many, in case Irkun decided to attack while they were gone, and a special set of veterans. Divim doesn't trust the ship or the sorcery that made it, but as they sail the land, they get in good spirits and tempt fate, joking that if this was Grom trying to slow them down, then once they reach the sea, they would be unstoppable. Then a turbulence happens, and one of the crew of the ship dies from falling off the sail's rope. So the mood dires. Finally, they reach the sea, and later on they get close to the capital of Oin and Yu. From a big tree, Devim and Elric observe that the capital looks poor, but they have 36 ships, and then there is the mirror of memory that is pointed towards the sea. The capital's poor condition makes a good disguise, and means the mirror can just point in one direction. Elric realizes that they don't have the men for a proper war, so they have to be swift. They will take the ship inland towards their capital, and with a swift move, rescue Cimmeril. They sail in haste, and the earth under them breaks, a giant chasm forming next to the ship, and a giant wave of earth above them. Elric calls to Grom to not kill them, to ask a favor of them but to not kill them. Grom appears and he wants his ship. Elric says that is not his ship to be given, it's Strasha like their bargain dictated. But Grom remembers no bargain, he wants his ship. Devim tried to negotiate if he wants something. Grom is a rough god, but he did not intend to kill 2 Melnibonians in his rage. In exchange for their bodies, Grom will let them use the ship on water. Elric tries to tell him he needs it on land, but the King won't have it. After taking the bodies, Grom disappears. Devim hates to say it, but it seems they need to use Elric's sorcery. The ship sailed its last road on land. Irkun looked upon his prized ships and complimented them. Cimmeril was there, skinny and worn. She kept saying Elric will come, but Irkun managed to summon demons that told him of his cousin's foolish endeavors. Irkun even managed to open the Shade Gate that will make him the most powerful mortal out there. He takes wine from a woman, then throws it away because it's slop. The woman is obedient and calls him Demon King, and Irkun likes that name. Suddenly, screams are heard. Fire is spreading on the streets of the capital of Oin and Yu. Irkun asks for the treacherous captain and tells him to stop the fire and point the mirror towards the strange ship that is coming at them. The captain says they can't fight the fire. Water simply won't leave their buckets. Those aren't simple barbarians that are coming at them. Irkun tells the captain to do something. And Cimmeril says that's Elric. But Irkun says it's not. It's some shaman from the steppe. Cimmeril says it's Elric because she can see his helmet. And it was Elric killing everything around him. The mirror of memory is pointed towards the invaders, and so Devim sounds his horn and prepares the veterans that they brought especially for this mission. Devim and Elric cover their eyes and listen to the sound of carnage. Irkun is surprised that the enemies continue to fight. The captain recognizes the men, because he fought with them once. Veterans of old wars, all of them blind. The captain says that's a very cunning strategy. Irkun says Elric isn't cunning, a demon gave him the idea, but there are no demons stronger than what Irkun can control. If only he didn't exert all his power opening the Shade Gate, he could summon demons to do his battle. He wished he had the rune blades to kill his cousin. But then he started to think how Elric was so prepared. They summoned Ariok. Irkun himself couldn't do that, and he heard from below the cry of battle. Ariok, Ariok, blood and souls for my lord Ariok. Irkun makes his new plan. He orders the captain to smash the mirror. He has another way to conquer the Dragon Isle. A simple one. And in the Shade Gate he has allies. The captain, always the fatalist, went and broke the mirror. Elric, Devim, and the blind soldiers entered the building, and as the mirror was broke, their heads started to hurt. The captain fell from where the mirror was put and died. Once the mirror was broken, all the memories contained within broke out free, trying to conquer any mind open to them, screaming and wailing. Elric said his name over and over, using the same effort he used to summon Ariok to stop the voices and remain himself. The screaming stopped, and Elric found Devim, who still lived. They lost only a few of their men in that trap. They marched on in Irkun's palace, and found Cimmeril with swirls and runes drawn on her. Cimmeril tells Elric her brother put a rune spell that will put her into a deep slumber, and only Irkun can wake her up. Elric asks where his cousin went. He went through the Shade Gate to find the rune blades, Stormbringer and Mournblade. She tells her lover that Irkun made pacts with demons, and then she falls asleep. There was a certain peace upon her face. Elric and Devim go through a door and find the Shade Gate. A smell like the palace of the dead flows from the gate, and Elric vows to hunt down his cousin even if it takes an eternity. The problem with the Shade Gate is that it leads to an infinity of netherworlds. Elric is distraught about this, but Arioch whispers to him to make Divim leave so they can talk. Elric tells the Lord of the Dragon Caves to leave him alone, and Arioch appears. The Chaos Lord promises he will take Elric to his cousin if Elric will get the two Rune Blades, Stormbringer and Mournblade, and become the most powerful mortal out there. This will also save Silmaril. Elric has his doubts about the two blades and their power. He asks his patron if this will also serve him, and Arioch confirms it in a way. Elric asks if his destiny can be changed, and the Chaos Lord says that no more than his can. In the end, Elric agrees. Arioch can't hold the gate open for much longer, and he does so in secret because Irkun thinks he closed it behind him. Divine comes back at Elric's request, and Elric tells him he will chase after his cousin, alone. Divine and the rest of the men will go back to Imrir, and if he isn't back in a reasonable time, then name Silmaril as Empress. And if she's not awake, Divine has to rule as regent until she wakes up. And now there is no turning back. Not for Divine Var, not for Elric. With his destiny forged 1,000 times over, forced eternally to be the champion of a cause he does not know, he walks through the gate. He enters a world of shadow, desolate and empty, a battlefield where once law and chaos fought and left nothing standing. Elric looked at the portal that closed behind him and knew regrets had no place here. Irkun was nowhere in sight. Elric thought he might have had the steed prepared or he appeared elsewhere. Elric felt as if he was underwater and he could barely see in front of him. Like pulled by strings, he went to a bunch of trees that still stood there. When his cloak touched one branch, it turned to dust. He continues to walk and passes a rock. Strange sounds come from a cave. Elric tries to present himself, but whoever was there shoots an arrow at him. Elric dodges, or technically the arrow doesn't hit him. The man from the cave says that was not meant to hurt him, but display his skill because he had his fill of demons in this land. Elric says he is mortal and that he is no demon, but when he presented himself, he said he is Elric from Melniboné, and the man has heard of that place, an island of demons. Elric says only the ignorant refer to them as demons. The man says he is not ignorant. He is a former warrior priest from Fum that once served the Chaos Lords, but stopped and they banished him there. The man asks if Elric suffered the same fate as him. Elric says he is on a quest, and he plans to return once he is done. The man didn't know leaving this world was a possibility, or an option. Elric says he is not sure if it is, but he will risk it. The warrior asks Elric if he plans to fight him, and the Emperor tells him he plans to fight only one person in this world. We then learn Fum is one of the oldest of the Young Kingdoms, way to the east, past the Weeping Waste and the Sighing Desert. The man comes out and presents himself as Rakhir, the Red Archer, because of the clothes he wears, a form of tradition for the priesthood of Fum and one of the only things he still respects. The archer proposes a deal to Elric. Since Rakhir has nothing to do in this realm and wants to leave, and Elric has a quest, the archer will help the Emperor, and when the time comes for Elric to leave, he will have to take Rakhir with him. Elric agrees if it is possible to take the archer with him. The archer says that is reasonable enough, and asks what is Elric looking for. The Emperor tells his new companion that he is looking for 2 rune blades that can be found in the pulsing cavern, which can be reached through the tunnel under the marshes. The archer has no idea about any of those places, or the swords, but he remembers he read something in a book once. Elric mentions the Chronicles of the Black Sword that talks about their creation, and it comes with this feature of revealing the destiny of the one who holds the blade. Rakhir doesn't know about that either, but the people of the city of Ameron might know. Elric is surprised to find out there is a city in this world. The archer confirms that he stayed there, but he found it unbearable and went into the wild. When asked why, the archer answered because it's an unhappy place, filled with exiles, refugees, or travelers between worlds, a true city of the damned. Elric asks the archer about the nature of this world. Rakhir tells him about 2 theories. One, that it's a sphere buried under an infinity rock, or that it's their/our world in the future when the universe ends. But those are not the only theories spoken of in the city of Amaron. Rakir has a philosophical exchange that Elric remarks, but the archer says it's this thinking that made him not follow the Chaos Lords. Rakir says he heard of this city called Tanelor, back in their world, a city in the Sign Desert where people are content to just live. If possible, the archer would want to live there, to see it. As he puts it, sometimes legends are best left as legends, so they move on to Amaron. Once they reach the city, Elric feels the stench of it and sees that it's a city of different architectural styles of ruin and semi-ruin. Elric asks for an inn, but Rakir tells him there are none. There's no town square either. People from different worlds and times have created their own places and live off one another. A den of degeneracy and decay. Sometimes making trade with demons, lesser minions of chaos, sometimes former sorcerers that have traded their soul to chaos. The two talk a little more about the nature of chaos and how Elric should know about how risky deals with chaos really are. They move on and Rakir says he knows an old man. From a dark cave, a tusked pig-like creature rears his head out and says pig, pig, pig. Elric isn't sure if it's describing itself or insulting him. Then another creature appears saying snake, a humanoid with a bunch of snakes for a head. All of them saying snake. Pig creatures in armor appear and the monstrosity that says stink comes with them. So now our heroes must fight their way out of this place where a creature can only say what it is. Elric fights the thing and he wonders if this is his fate in the end, to become a mindless demon creature. But he continues to slice at the thing. Then the more he slices it, the quieter it gets. A man climbs some ruins and is using magic to help Elric. He screams at Elric to finish the monster, and Elric does so. Before dying, the thing says Frank. Elric wonders if that is its name, or was its name once, but none can really tell. Elric asks if his companion is alright, and he is. He then asks who the old man is and why did he help him, and he says he saw a tall one tell the demons to attack them. He didn't think it fair, so he jumped in to absorb some power from the thing, and that made him feel better than ever, saying that Ninwin's sorcery still works here. The archer and the old man have seen each other before and they know each other. The old man is named Ninwin who knew all. He wanted to know everything, so Orland of the Staff sent him to this place until he forgot everything to show him the error of his way. He knows of Elric and the Black Sword and his destiny, but when Elric asks him about his destiny, Ninwin says he forgot. Elric tries to be more pushy, Ninwin continues saying he forgot, and finally Rakir just says he just simply forgot. There's no point in asking for more. Nevertheless, when asked about the marsh and the tunnels, he gives them directions before forgetting everything. The two companions leave him alone. Rakir says he envies him, but Elric says he pities him. When asked why, Elric says that once he will forget everything, he may well forget to live Amaron. Rakir appreciates the joke and asks if all his thoughts are so hopeless. They do tend in that direction. They reach the swamp and the monument that Ninwin told him about. Finding the tunnel would be the hard part though. Elric presumes that his cousin has some sorcerer's aid to help him. Rakir asks if he can do the same. Elric can summon demons. Irkun was the one with all the spells and so on. This was not helped by Elric's waning power. Elric somehow sees a black road, and while it will regularly look like a trap, they have nothing to lose. So they start walking, and the road becomes slippery. Elric falls into the marsh, and the marsh wants to eat him whole. Rakir manages to save him by using his bow to pull him out. This is a really great moment of brotherhood between the two. After Elric is saved, he tells the archer he owes him his life and will do everything in his power to take the archer from this world. Rakir says Elric is a man, and there are very few of those in any world. True. They continue the path by walking on their knees, which was the safer option, until they reach their destination. Elric and Rakir reach the entrance to the tunnel, and yet they both agree it was too easy. They enter, and it feels like the cave is alive. They reach a point where there was only one opening in the wall, too small for a person to get through. But Elric realized the person can pass through that because it would expand. Yes, it was a cave more like made of living flesh. The pulsing cavern and so on, you can pretty much get it. He tells his friend to stay back as he moves forward. Rakhir won't do that, so they pass through the first hole and then through another, and that one leads to Irkun and the two blades. Elric wants to strike his cousin with his sword, but he can't, so Rakhir shoots an arrow at the traitor, but Irkun informs them that normal weapons don't work here. Elric understands and tells his friend to leave, or else he will die. Despite his protest, the Red Archer leaves. The two cousins get a blade each. Elric gets Stormbringer, and Irkun gets Mornblade. They start to fight. Elric is stronger now, needing not drugs or magic. The two clash, and it feels like the sword hunger to fight each other and claim the life of one of the swordsmen as a prize. Or maybe both. Elric understands that the sword exists to fight, and it hungers for souls. The sword wants to control Elric, and once he realizes this, he tries to fight it. As Irkun comes to attack him, perfectly open for a death blow, Elric pulls the sword, only grazing his cousin. Elric tells the sword that it will not be his master. They will disarm Irkun, but they will not kill him. Irkun has no such quarrels, and he moves for the kill again. The sword moves fast like a rapier, answering to Elric's control. The Emperor grabs the sword with both hands, and his cousin does the same. With one overhead blow, Elric disarms Irkun. He smiles, knowing he bested his cousin, the will of the sword, and has defeated the sword brother. Mornblade hit a wall and lands on the ground. It lays still for a moment, then it shrieks and disappears. At Elric's feet there is a black scabbard with runes that match Stormbringer's. Irkun cries for his blade. As Elric approaches, the cowardly cousin tries to flee, but the hole shrinks in size to be as big as a coin. He begs Elric to not kill him with that sword. Kill him in any other way, but not with that blasted sword. Elric tells him they are both victims of living swords, demons, and gods, and that they wish one of them dead. More likely Irkun than Elric, and that is the reason why Elric won't become a kinslayer. He then proceeds to call his cousin a worm, and even if he had everything he ever wanted, he would still be a worm, putting more salt on that wound. Elric then tells his cousin to wake Cimmeril, but Irkun can't. He gave too much for too little, and didn't plan Elric would follow him and defeat him. Elric goes to the hole and discusses with Rakhir. They can't really escape. The archer could go back or get in and share the same fate as the Melnibonians. The archer gets in because there's not much to go back to for him. They discuss about how Elric kept Irkun alive. The archer asks if he can't cut the walls with a sword. The cowardly cousin tells them it's useless, so Elric has no other option but to pull out his trump card and contact his patron. He summons Ariok, and he appears in the monstrous form, until Irkun complains about it and the Chaos Lord switches back to his youthful and fiery form. The Chaos Lord congratulates Elric for getting the sword, but asks him why is his cousin alive. Elric tells him because he needs him to wake Cimmeril, and by the reaction of the Chaos Lord, Elric realized that he avoided a giant trap by not killing his cousin. He then asks for a way out. Then Ariok himself asks what is Rakhir doing here. Elric tells him he made a deal with the Red Archer and he needs to leave this plane as well. Ariok refuses since Rakhir was exiled there. There is no way for him to get out. But Elric tells him that if he won't do it, he won't take the sword and they'll be stuck there. Ariok argues that his servant must think of his responsibilities, but Elric already did, and he made his decision. The Chaos Lord finally gives in, but warns the Red Archer that the Lords of Chaos are known to be malicious. Ariok asks where should he take them. Elric of course answers and says to Melniboné, and the Chaos Lord does something creepy, saying the Emperor is his sweetest servant. The three appear in the throne room, and Elric tells his cousin to wake Cimmeril because he has a bargain for him. Rakhir says that there are so many bargains, it's like a marketplace. Cimmeril wakes up and Elric tells her how she is safe now, how Irkun woke her up and he no longer hates his cousin. Both of them being victims of higher powers contributed to that. This mercy. The cousin is left to go. Dvim says he shouldn't trust his cousin, but Elric doesn't need to trust him. If Irkun doesn't fear him, he fears the sword he carries. The two lovers then kiss. Dvim is skeptical of Stormbringer. A week of celebration happens and a lavish ball is held in the throne room. Dvim broods while looking at Irkun. Elric talks with Cimmerio about being empress, how she will marry him. Elric then tells her she has to wait 1 year, for he plans to visit the young kingdoms and change Melniboné for the better. Elric wants to learn if it's possible for men to rule their own destiny. Cimmerio refuses to live with him. She is Melnibonian and has no interest for such things, though it is painful. Elric tells her that she must rule as empress, but of course she refuses. In the sea of people dancing, only one figure stands brooding, alone. And that's Irkun. Elric wants to put his cousin upon the ruby throne. Of course, Cimmerio objects because it's a terrible idea. Elric argues that things are different now. Irkun gets his year to rule, and if he does good, Elric might abdicate and let his cousin rule forever. If he fails, then that ends his ambitions forever. Cimmerio says she loves him, but he's a fool, a criminal if he leaves. Elric says he isn't a fool. He is Elric, and he can't help that. It is Elric that I love, but Elric is doomed. We are all doomed unless you remain here now. Elric tells her because he loves her, he can't. You will destroy us, Elric, Cimmerio says. Elric tells her he will be back. He will discover things, and they shall live long and happy. Now, Elric has told 3 lies, and upon those lies is his destiny built. For it is only about things which concern us most profoundly that we lie clearly and with profound conviction. In the epilogue, Elric and Rakhir sail Thrasha's ship by themselves to the port of Many of the Purple Stone. Rakhir plans to find the City of Peace, Tanalor. Elric must follow his map and go back to Melniboné in a year. The archer asks him if he really plans to go back in a year. Elric answered that she will call for him. Rakhir says he would like to join his friend, but he must find Tanalor, if it even exists. The ship starts sinking. Elric says that while the elements are friends, their power wanes, as does Melniboné. Rakhir says he envies Elric, that he has friends he could trust, but he would be wise to trust nothing else. He says that while looking at Stormbringer. Fear not for me, Rakhir, for I am my own master, for a year at least, and I am master of this sword now, of Stormbringer. I shall be a new man when I return to Melniboné.